My name is Julie, and today I'm going to show you how to deploy a Wisej.net application on a Linux virtual machine. So first, as a prerequisite, I'm assuming that you've already created a Linux virtual machine and that you know the public IP address, username, and password. So if you haven't done that, go ahead and do that now. Next, I'm going to go over the steps that we're going to be doing. First, you're going to create a new Wisej.net project and publish it to a folder. Next, we'll connect to the virtual machine. We'll install ASP.NET Core 7.0, and we'll also install NGINX. We're going to use FileZilla to copy the Wisej.net project to the virtual machine. We'll enable execute permissions on the file we want to run, which in our case is our executable for our Wisej project, and then we'll run it on port 80 using HTTP. At this point, you can go to the public IP address of the server and test that it's running. Next, now that we've got it running on port 80, we want to get it running as a service and use NGINX as a reverse proxy to route requests to our Wisej project. So we'll need to create a service and start our project as a service. We'll need to configure and start NGINX. After that, you could be able to go to the public IP address of the server and test that it's running. And then congratulations, your Wisej.net application is running on a Linux server, and anyone that knows the public IP address of the server can see it. Some things that you might want to do after you follow these steps. So we're going to deploy it using HTTP. You might want to use HTTPS, and you might want to configure a URL, for example, something like www.yourwebsite.com, instead of just having people access the IP address of the server directly. This can be done using certbot and NGINX, but unfortunately, the exact instructions are outside the scope of this video. Okay, so let's go ahead and create a Wisej project using Visual Studio. So go ahead and open up Visual Studio. Create a new project. Make sure you've got Wisej installed. You should be able to select it from the list here so you can see all the Wisej templates. I'm just going to go with a web page application. We'll go ahead and call it Wisej Linux test. Default location is fine. Hit create. I'll leave all these boxes unchecked. You can use Docker to deploy to Linux. In this case, we're just deploying directly to a VM. We're not using Docker, so I'm not going to add a Docker file. And then here's our project. So I'm going to go ahead and just add some simple things just so that when our project loads, we can actually see what it looks like and it's not just a blank page. So I'll go ahead and go to the toolbox here. Let's go ahead and add like a label. Just say hello world. Go ahead and hit escape there and then Control Z because I accidentally added an extra label. Let's go ahead and add a button. So there's a button. Make it nice and big. The text can be click me. Hit escape to cancel out of that. Let's see, so if I want to add an event, I can go over here to the lightning bolt and I'll double click on the click event. So this is the click event to the button. We'll just go ahead and do an alert box. Alert box dot show you clicked the button. Perfect. Go ahead and run that. So this is, we're just running on Windows. This is Windows 11 here. It'll pop up in the browser. And there we go. We've got Hello World. If I click on the button, it does that, right? So our goal is to get this to run on a Linux VM. You can see right now it's just running on my local computer, right? Localhost 5000. All right. So we've got our project. It works. So now we need to go ahead and build it. We're going to build it to a folder, and then we're going to put the files on the virtual machine and then run them from there. Oh, one thing to keep in mind. So if you go to web.config, make sure that you put your license key in here. If you don't put in your license key, when you go to run it on the Linux VM, you'll get a warning that you need a license key. So make sure to do that. And then as far as publishing, so I'm just going to right click up here and choose publish. And we're going to publish to a folder. bin/publish is fine, so finish. I'm going to just create the publish profile, which is great, so we'll hit close. click on Show All Settings and just make sure it's set up correctly. Sure, this can be a release build. Why not? Sounds good. We're deploying it to a server, so that kind of makes sense. You could do a debug build if you wanted to. Our target framework is going to be .NET 7.0. So this needs to match whatever version of ASP.NET you've installed on your, or what you will install on your Linux VM, because I'll show you how to install it. Deployment mode. So I'm going to do framework dependent in this case, which basically just means that you're going to have to install .NET 7.0 on Linux. I could do self-contained, in which case this would generate a bigger file, but it would contain the ASP.NET Core runtime, so we wouldn't have to install that on Linux. But I want to show you guys how to install the ASP.NET Core runtime on Linux, so I'm just going to do framework dependent. And then the target runtime, so I know I want this on Linux. In this case, it's going to be Linux x64. And then over here for file publish options, I'm going to do produce single file. The executable will be a single file. It'll also produce some additional files, but the executable will be a single file, which is very convenient for us. And then delete all existing files prior to publish, so that way, if I, for some reason, need to republish this, it'll just overwrite everything. So that's perfect. So I'm going to hit save and then publish. And you can see it says build started. And there we go, publish succeeded. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at the files that it created. So if I right click up here, I can go to open folder in File Explorer. And so this is my project here, right? So like this is the solution file. So if for some reason, let's say I had closed this, I wanted to reopen my project, right? I could just open that there. And then we put it in bin/publish. So if we go to bin and publish, here are all of our files. This right here, this is our executable. It looks maybe a little bit weird if you're used to working in Windows, because you notice it doesn't end in .exe like a Windows executable does, but that's because it's a Linux executable. And the convention for those is they just don't have a .exe. They don't have any kind of file extension. We've got this here, which this would be really more for a debug or test build than a release build. These program debug files. And then our lovely icon, default.json, and then default.html. So that's what that should look like. Okay, so next we're going to go ahead and connect to the virtual machine using the terminal, and then we're going to install the .NET SDK. So go ahead and open up your terminal. I'm going to use git bash, and go ahead and type SSH, your username, which in my case is itg admin @ and then your public IP. And it'll prompt you for your password. And hit enter, and there we go, we are in. So I would recommend going to this website here, Microsoft documentation for installing the .NET SDK or .NET Runtime on Ubuntu. There's a couple of methods you can use to install it. I'm going to use the Microsoft feed over the Ubuntu feed, just because of the supported version is always available versus usually the latest version is available. So if you want to install an older version, this is a little bit better. So if you click on it to go to the instructions, it will give you a warning. So you definitely do have to pick between the Microsoft package repository or the Ubuntu feed. You cannot do both. And then I'm just going to copy in these commands here to connect to the Microsoft package repository. So I'm just going to copy that, paste that in, enter. it's loading, so we'll give it some time. There we go. Okay, so I'm back to my regular command, so it's done. Then if I scroll down a bit, you'll see a couple of options. So we can install the SDK or the runtime. The main difference is the runtime is just for running applications. The SDK will let you create and build them. So because we're building our application on Windows and then uploading the files to the Linux server, technically we only need the runtime, but I'm going to go ahead and install the SDK. So you'll see it's apt install and then the command. So we'll do apt install .NET SDK 7.0. And if you're getting errors like this, it's because you need to use the word sudo in front. So I'm going to hit the up arrow to bring up the previous command. Hit the word sudo. There we go. If you want to continue, we'll hit Y for yes. And there we go, it's downloading. While it's downloading, please enjoy this lovely comic about sudo. Sudo is essentially just an acronym for super user do. It temporarily gives you administrator privileges, which allows you to do things that a standard user can't do, like install applications. If you're trying to run a command at any point and it's not working, I recommend you try putting sudo in front and see if that fixes it. Alright, so we have that installed. Here's some more useful commands. lsb release-a. That'll tell you what version of Ubuntu you're running, so I know I'm using 22.04.2, so that might come in handy if you need to figure that out. Another command I'm going to use is .NET --list -runtimes, and that'll just show me what versions, so you can see I've got version 7.0.5 installed. If you're not sure if you installed it correctly or you just want to double check, this is a good command to run. And then if you run this and it comes up with some kind of what is .NET? I don't understand the command, then you know it did not get installed correctly. The other thing is you'll notice if you try and just exit by just terminal using here, because we're still connected to the VM. So if you want to exit properly, you can just type in exit, enter, and then now you can see I'm back to my regular command, so I've disconnected from the VM, and then I can click on the X to exit normally. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to install and start NGINX on a virtual machine. So if you haven't already, go ahead and SSH into your virtual machine. There we go. I recommend this site here, hostasp.net core on Linux with NGINX, the Microsoft site. This has got some useful stuff here that we're going to use. In our case, we just need to install NGINX. Alright, so I will do sudo apt get update. There we go. Sudo apt get install nginx-y, so that'll install nginx. There we go. And then once it's installed, when we want to start it, just sudo service nginx start. Sudo service nginx start. And there we go. And then to test that it's working, go to the public IP address of your virtual machine. Just put it in the web browser. So let me just paste that in here. And you should see this welcome to NGINX page. So yeah, that's how to connect to NGINX. Have the information about your Linux VM ready, the public IP, username, and password. We'll need it soon. So now we're going to go ahead and upload our files using FileZilla. You're going to need to know where your files are. So if you want, you can just go to your project, open folder in File Explorer. You remember when we published them, we put them in the bin publish folder, so they are right here. And then you can just go ahead and copy this file path here. Next, I'm going to open up FileZilla. So if you have not already installed it, now is the time to do so, which it's pretty easy to install. So if you just Google FileZilla, go here, you can download it from their website. FileZilla is just a really nice tool for uploading files to the server, and it's just really nice to be able to see the files on your local machine and on the server. So you can see here it's got my local machine, and then I'm not connected to the server yet. So on my local side, I know that I want to go to this file path, so I'm just going to go ahead and copy that and paste that there, hit enter, and there we go. We can see all the files we want to upload. So now I'm going to go to File, Site Manager. I want to connect to the remote server, so we'll just do a new site. We'll call it Linux VM Test 2. For protocol, we're going to do SFTP. Our host that's just going to be the public IP of your virtual machine. A login type, we'll do ask for password. So I'll just put in my username here and hit OK. And then when you want to connect, you can just do File, Site Manager, Linux VM Test 2, and we'll hit Connect. So if you put in the wrong password here, it will probably, yeah, there we go, authentication failed, right? So if you get the error, just make sure you type your password correctly. And then I'll go ahead and connect to it now. And there we go. So now it's successfully connected. So you can see these are the files on the remote server. So now we just need to take these files and copy them to the correct location. So we need to make a folder to put all of our files in. So I'm just going to make it in the terminal. You can see I'm connected to my virtual machine here. So make dir -p /var/www/test. Permission denied, which is fine. I just need to use sudo. There we go. And then I can just copy this. So it's attempting to get the files. Okay, so it looks like it timed out and then it succeeded. Okay, so there we go. So now I just need to copy these files to the VM. You can just highlight them and click and drag them. It's going to fail because I don't have write permissions. If I look under failed transfers, you can see they all failed. I'm going to fix this by setting write permissions for the var/www/test folder in the terminal. To start off, I need to cd into the correct folder. cd/var/www. Then if I type ls, I can see the test folder right there. So now I can type sudo chmod 755 quotes test end quotes. And now when I click and drag the files, it works. File transfer successful. Yeah, so now that we enabled write permissions, we were able to write all of our files, and so now we've got all our files on the remote server. And then if you want to look at them in the terminal here, so if I do ls, right, I can see test. So I go cd test, and then I can do ls, and there's all the files, right? Default HTML, default JSON, Wisej Linux test, which is our executable. Remember, it doesn't have a file extension because that's just how Linux executables work. The PDB file and the icon. We have successfully put everything in FileZilla. One more useful command. If I do ls-l, there we go. This is handy. So this shows us the read and write permissions on all of these files, which actually you'll notice none of them have execute permissions. So we're going to have to fix that later because we do not currently have execute permissions to execute this file, which is kind of a problem. Let's see. And then if I go up a level, let's do ls-l. So our test folder. this is the same thing here, right? So owner has read, write, and execute. Group has read and execute, and then right there, that would be owner, right? Read, write, execute. Group is read and execute, right? So right here, the r-x, right? So that's our group permissions. You notice no write permissions, no W, there's a dash there instead. And then public permissions is read and execute, no write. So again, it matches up. So you can view it in FileZilla. You can use ls-l if you want to view it via the terminal. Same thing. And you can see we can view it for folders and for files. So we've got all our files on the remote server. Now we're going to go ahead and enable execute permissions on the file and then go ahead and run it. Let's see, I'm in var ww, so if I do ls, I should see the test folder, and then I can cd into it. If I do ls-l, I can see my permissions, right? And we can see that this file right here are executable. Nobody has execute permissions, right? There are no X's there. So that is a bit of a problem. You can try and change the permissions through FileZilla, but that generally doesn't work. Actually, you know what? No, I am going to do it here just so I can see what command fails. So let's try and give the owner execute permissions. So that would be 764. Oh, that actually worked. Let's see. Yep, okay. So yeah, so that's one way to do it. Or if for some reason that didn't work in FileZilla, you could do sudo chmod 764, and it was Wisej Linux test. This command won't do anything because I just set it to the permissions that it already had. But we can see we still have execute permissions. We've got the permissions enabled. So let's go ahead and run it. // and then the name of our file, which is Wisej Linux test. All right, and so it says it's now listening on localhost 5000. If this server was more than just a terminal and I actually had like a browser, I could go to localhost 5000 and see it, right? Just like how when you run your project on your local computer, you go to localhost 5000 to see it. You Control-C to exit out of that, so that'll stop the application. Okay, we successfully ran it on port 5000. So let's go ahead and run it on port 80. Port 80 is a special port. It's the port for HTTP as opposed to HTTPS, which would be 443. So if we serve it at port 80, we'll be able to access it from the IP. And then later on, we'll set it up so that NGINX will actually be the one listening at 80, and then it'll route to our application. But for now, let's just do it real simple. We're just going to serve it at port 80. We need to do sudo // Wisej Linux test, right? So the same command as last time. And then we're just going to specify that it's going to run on port 80. So -- urls equals http wildcard.80. And you notice we get some errors here. So if we scroll up to the top, you can see it says port 80 is already in use. And the reason for that is because we are actually still running NGINX on port 80. So if you remember from the previous step when we tested out NGINX, NGINX listens on port 80. And I can prove that by typing in my public IP, and there you go, NGINX is still running. So we need to stop that. So to stop NGINX, it's going to be sudo systemctl stop NGINX. Oh, I misspelled that. There we go. If I refresh, There we go. So now when we go to the IP, we're not getting anything because NGINX is not serving that page anymore. So now I should be able to run my application on port 80. And it's running on port 80, so if I refresh, there we go. We're getting some errors and we'll fix those in a bit, but it is at least running. Here's a quick summary of the 2 errors we need to fix. This error is caused by not having a valid license of Wisej included with your build. This error is caused by not having Libgdiplus installed on the virtual machine. In order to fix the license key error, we need to edit web.config. This is web.config right here, and this is what it looks like once it's opened. You'll see it says add key equals wisej.license key, value equals, and there's a spot to put a value in the quotes. Go ahead and copy paste your license key right here. Make sure to use the server license key, because we are deploying to a server. Okay, so I've edited my web.config. I've got my license key in there now. So now I'm going to make a new build. So I'm just going to right-click, publish, and just hit publish again. We don't need to change any settings. If you remember, we set it to delete all existing files prior to publish, right? So it'll just essentially overwrite what we had before. And now we just need to copy the new files to FileZilla, and we also need to manually copy our web.config file to FileZilla, because unfortunately, for whatever reason, the web.config file is a special file. You just got to copy it manually. All right, so let's see. We're in FileZilla here. I should be able to grab this, and I should be able to just drag it over. It already exists, right? So I'm just going to tell it to overwrite. Just overwrite everything. And we're good, successfully transferred. And then we also need the web.config. Let's go ahead, open File Explorer. There it is, web.config. We need this guy, just in this folder. So we'll just switch to this folder. And there's our beautiful web.config. Copy it over. Permission denied. Okay, so now I'm in var ww. And let's try sudo chmod 777 test and ls-l. So everyone's got permission to do everything in test. So now let's see how that likes it. Okay, I mean, this is a test server, but on an actual server, right? You don't want to just give everyone permission to do everything. I want to do the test folder. Yes, 755 should be good. So let's just change that back to 755. Now that we've got our file. Okay, so we've got our web.config. Now we are going to fix the error that we saw earlier by installing Libgdiplus. You can see I'm already connected to the virtual machine in this terminal. You can use the command dpackage-l libgdiplus to check if libgdiplus is installed. You can see based on this message that it's not currently installed. Next, we're going to update our system with the command sudo apt-get update. All right, so that's been updated. Then we'll type the command sudo apt install libgdiplus to install libgdiplus. I'm going to hit enter. I'm going to hit enter again. And now if we type the command dpackage-l libgdiplus again, we can see that libgdiplus is now installed. If you go to the website docs.wisej.com, you can see instructions for installing libgdiplus. I only needed the command sudo apt install libgdiplus to install it, but there are some other commands here that you can run if that isn't enough. Let's go ahead and rerun the Wisej project to see if we got rid of the error about the license and the error from not having Libgdiplus installed. So I'm just going to run it on port 80, same command as before. Sudo / the name of my file, which is Wisej Linux test, and -- URLs HTTP of port 80. Just paste that in. Enter. Command not found. Let's make sure I'm in the correct folder. Let me cd into this folder. Go ahead and copy, paste. Okay. Hit the up arrow key twice to bring up our previous command. There we go. Okay. So that's important. So you have to be in the folder that contains your executable, right? So I just tried running this from the initial root folder that you're in when you start the VM. Doesn't work. You've got to go into the, in our case, into the test folder. Okay, so now it's running. Moment of truth. Let's go to the web browser. Let's stick in our public IP of our server, and let's see how our project looks. There we go. So you can see the license error is now gone. If I click on the button, we get the you click the button. Our app is running. However, it's not using NGINX right now, right? So remember we had to disable NGINX because we're just running it directly on port 80. So we have run our application, we've gone to the public IP address of the server, and it's working. Our next step is we want to run our application as a service and then get NGINX to act as reverse proxy and route requests that go to port 80 to our application. The advantage of running our application as a service is that if the server restarts, it can restart the application. Whereas right now, if I just leave this terminal window or stop the application, it just won't restart, right? It'll just be gone. With a service, you can make it so that it'll restart on server restart. Let me go ahead and stop my application with Control-C. So it's shutting down. And then we're going to use the touch command to create a new file. I'm going to call it Wisej Linux app.service, but you can call it whatever you want. Okay, so it's shut down. So you can see it says offline. If I refresh, it should just completely not load it. Yeah, there we go. So let's create our service. Touch /ect/ systemd/system/ and then the name of our service, which I will call it Wisej Linux app.service. And then you'll notice it says permission denied. So there's a couple things we can try. So let's try sudo. Okay, so that worked. The other idea was maybe write permissions weren't enabled on that file, but it looks like sudo did the trick.
Now I should be able to open our new file, Wisej Linux app.service, in FileZilla.
So let me go to FileZilla. Let me go ahead and connect. It'll prompt me for the password. And there we go. And then I need to go to this directory, so I'm just going to copy that. There we go. And somewhere in here, we should see Wisej Linux app.service. Yeah, there it is. Let me go ahead and view edit. Okay, and then just to make sure this works, I'm just going to type the word hello and then save it just to make sure that I am able to edit it. Upload this file, yes. Overwrite it. Open for write, permission denied, file transfer failed. Yeah, failed transfers, yeah. Okay, so we do need to make sure that we have write permissions on this. So, file permissions. Okay, so let's let the public write to it. That should do it. And then, yeah, so that command didn't work, but if we do sudo, and it looks like it is 666 now, that should work now. So now if I go to file permissions, okay, it didn't update in there, but I'm fairly sure that went through. Let's try it now. Save. Upload this file, yeah. Okay, so that succeeded. So we did successfully get our permissions updated. So I know I can edit this file. So we'll go ahead and view edit. Download from the server, got my text. Okay. If you go to this website here, let me scroll up to the top. Right, so this host ASP.NET Core on Linux with NGINX. And then you scroll down to where it talks about creating a service. Right here, this is the code that we need. So I am just going to copy this and delete that. Control V, paste it in. Let's see, a couple of things we need to change here. Our description. So this is going to be an example Wisej.NET web app running on Linux. Our working directory var www test. And then to start it, so this is your command. So we just want to do var www test, because that's our directory. There's no .dll, because this is a Linux executable. They don't have a file extension. And then our executable, let's see, actually I can see it right here in FileZilla, right? Our executable was Wisej Linux test. I'm going to change the user, right? So if you remember my username and password from FileZilla, right? My username was itgadmin, so that'll be my user. Yeah, that should be good. Okay, so we'll go ahead and Control S to save this, close out, upload this file, yes. File transferred. Okay, so we've got our service. So now we just need to run it. So I'm going to type systemctl start, and then the name of my service, which is Wisej Linux app.service. It asked me for my password. So that should have gone through. Now we need to test that it's running. So I can do systemctl status, and then the name of my service, which is Wisej Linux app.service. All right, and you'll see it says active running in green. So that means I have successfully started running my service. If you're not getting this active running, double check your service file and make sure that everything is configured correctly. So we've got our service, it's running. Now we need to configure NGINX so that it routes requests to our service. I just ran the command systemctl status Wisej Linux app.service, which showed us that our service is running. I can use Control-C to close out of that information. This doesn't stop the service. So NGINX should already be installed. I'm just going to double check. Command -v NGINX, and that shows the folder where it's installed. So yeah, NGINX has been installed. Next, we need to edit the NGINX configuration file. In FileZilla, go to /etc/nginx/sites-available, which is the folder on the virtual machine where the NGINX configuration file is located. So paste that in there, hit enter. There we go. So you see this file here, this configuration file. So I need to edit this.
And it's probably going to complain about file permissions again, but let's see what happens when I click on View Edit.
I don't want to break anything while editing it, so we'll just change that to comment, Control S to save, close out. And yeah, file transfer failed. Yeah, right? Because yeah, permission denied. Okay, so let's set our permissions here. Let's see, so X, NGINX sites available. Let me just Control C, do CD, and then paste that in here. There we go. Okay, so now I should be able to change my permissions. So sudo chmod 666. And then I will do that as a sudo thing here so that it works. So that should have done it. And now if I go to view edit and comment, Control S, close out. Yes, we'll transfer successful, right? And then if I go ahead and view edit, download and edit, you can see that my edits were saved. For the contents of the NGINX config file, I recommend using this handy website from Microsoft, hostasp.net core on Linux with NGINX. Here we go, configure NGINX. Right, so this is what we want. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that. I'm just going to delete everything that was here before and paste it in. And then we don't really need to change this. So some things to note, it's listening at port 80, right? Because we're using HTTP, that's a port for HTTP.
As for the server name, if you have an actual domain name where you're hosting the website, like www.bestwebsiteever.com, this is the place to put it. If you're like me and you're just using the public IP of the server to access it, you can leave it as example.com, you can change it to an underscore, or you can change it to 127.0.0.1, i.e. localhost. I'm just going to leave it as example.com.
This right here should be fine. So it's going to run on the server's local IP at port 5000.
And the rest of it should be fine.
Let's go ahead and Control S. Let's save that. Go back here. Sure, we'll go ahead and finish editing, delete local file. That's fine. Hit yes. And file transfer complete. The next thing I want to do is I just want to check and make sure that configuration is okay. Essentially that the syntax is all right. So you can do that with the command sudo nginx-t. The configuration file syntax is okay. Now we're going to go ahead and reload nginx. So sudo nginx-s reload. Invalid PID number and run/nginx.pid. Let's see. Let me try and start nginx. Maybe that would have been better than reloading it. Sudo service nginx start. So the reload would have worked if we had already started nginx, but because we weren't currently running nginx, that was no good. Let's go ahead and open up Chrome. Let's see what we get when we go to the public IP of our server. Okay. Good news is that we know nginx is running, right? Because we started nginx. It seems to be routing us to our application. The bad news is it's failing to initialize Wisej. When Wisej starts up, it needs to go to this file, and that file access is denied. So we have a good old permissions problem. Yay! This shouldn't be too bad to fix. So let's go ahead and try and access this folder. I'm just going to look at it through the terminal here. Let me go back to my main directory, cd tilde, and let's see, the path is /tmp. Oh, right, cd/tmp. And if I hit ls, right, so you can see the stuff in there, including wisej3, right, which is our next folder. So cd wisej3. I have to put this in quotes because there's a space. Oh, and I need to spell it correctly. There we go. ls, write applications. Okay, yep. That was the next file. Or the next folder, sorry. cd applications. And ls. This is the issue here. So this folder does not exist. Most of the file path works, but this last one here is expecting a file called localhost 5000, and it's called our public IP -80. There's also probably a permissions issue. It's probably trying to execute something that it doesn't have execute permissions for, would be my guess as well. Let's go ahead and rename this directory. Let's call it localhost 5000. So let's see. Let me go ahead and do cd tilde. Let me paste that in. So sudo, because we need sudo, it won't work. mv, so just indicating that we're renaming things. So this first thing in here, quotes, is the original file path. You'll notice it has the weird file name with the server IP -80, and then the second thing in quotes is the new file path. Again, they have to be in quotes because wisej3 right here has a space in it. If you've ever got a folder with a space, you've got to put it in quotes. Okay, so let's hit enter. I've got the wrong IP. It's what I get for copy pasting in. Right, so this will match whatever your public IP is. It'll probably be different for you. Okay, let's try that. There we go. So that worked. If I can cd into this folder, I'm just going to do it all in one step to be a little bit faster instead of going folder by folder. And then ls. So now you can see the file is called localhost 5000. Okay, close out of that.
Let's go ahead and restart NGINX using the command sudo nginx-s reload.
So now let's see, and I'm going to guess it's probably still going to fail because we probably still need to enable execute permissions, but let's see what it does. Yeah, but you'll notice we got some progress. Access to the path. So this desktop.json, so it says that's denied, which I believe is an execute permissions issue. Okay, so let's look at the issue here. Maybe you're getting just a loading screen. Maybe you're getting like access to this path is denied. It's the same issue, right? So let's investigate this here. Let's go ahead and look at this path. So I will just cd into that folder. Do ls-ld so we can see the permissions, and then ls so we can see all the files, right? So this is the files essentially needed to load and run Wisej that it's complaining about. We're going to go ahead and edit the service file, edit the configuration, and go ahead and make sure that the user is running the file correctly. We're going to go ahead and essentially use sudo to run the file to get past all of these permission errors. Now let's go ahead and stop the service. Systemctl stop. Wisej Linux app dot service. Okay, so that stopped, and then I can double check that by refreshing the page, right? So we can see it's no longer able to access the site. Next, we're going to go ahead and actually edit the service file. So I'm just going to open that through FileZilla. So I'll go ahead and connect. Okay, so we've connected. Okay, my service file is in etc/systemd/system. There we go. Right, so there it is, Wisej Linux act.service. So we'll go ahead, right click, view edit. It pops up right here. And this is what we need to mess with here. So it's telling it the correct file to run, but it doesn't have the permissions. So we need to essentially run it using sudo. So what I'm going to do is at the beginning, I'm just going to add /user/bin/sudo and then a space. And then just to double check, this user, especially with sudo, does have permissions to run that file. Double check your user, that could be the issue as well. So let's go ahead and save. So Control S, close out of that. Yes, upload the file. You'll notice it's still not working because we stopped the service and we edited the file, but we need to restart the service. So I can just hit the up arrow key and I just want to say start. I'm just going to for my password. And there we go. And now it's working. Something else you can try, so in that case it was the service. Let's say for some reason you needed to stop and restart NGINX. I'll just show those commands real quick. So to stop NGINX, you can do sudo service NGINX stop. And you notice if I refresh, it's not working because NGINX isn't able to direct it anywhere. And then I can go ahead and start it. So same exact command, except I can just say start. And now if I refresh, now it's running again. All right, so that was how to deploy a Wisej application on Linux.